Good afternoon. My name is Paul Conway and I serve as the co-chair of the Global Summit, and thank you for joining this session. This session is entitled Emerging Research with Global Implications, Advancements Toward the Artificial Organs, or in this case particularly, artificial implantable and wearable kidneys. Our first guest comes to us from the American Society of Nephrology, a longtime AAKP ally, Dr. Mark Lim, who serves as the Vice President of Research, Discovery, and Innovation at ASN. He also heads up the oversight of the project called KidneyX, which is a prize competition in the kidney space, which since its founding in 2018 has awarded 50 innovators with prizes for unique contributions in the areas of implantable dialysis devices, dialysis infection prevention, and other discoveries that have profound implications not just for patients, but also for their families, the research community, and the country. Mark is a really dynamic leader. He has a great background in the federal government, where he has overseen major research programs and major projects. He's a great patient advocate, a good friend of AAKP, and a really solid person in the areas of science and the production of complex solutions. Mark, go right ahead.
Hi, my name is Mark Lim. I'm the Vice President of Research, Discovery, and Innovation at the American Society of Nephrology. Really want to thank AAKP for this opportunity to present at the third annual Global Summit. Really to share both where KidneyX has gone and where we're planning to take KidneyX with the goal of continuing to catalyze really innovations so that we have more options for people with kidney diseases. I'll be doing most of the presentation, but much of this presentation is on behalf of also Molly O'Neill, one of my colleagues who won't be able to join us today, who's the KidneyX coordinator. In terms of disclosures, both of us are full-time employees of ASN. Molly doesn't have any disclosures to make. I'm a non-paid voting member of Scientific Advisory Board for the organization listed there. Particularly for this audience, it really goes without saying why innovation is needed for people with kidney diseases. I think the need for innovation was even more amplified during the COVID pandemic, in which really our patient community needed more innovations, both those on dialysis, those who are transplant recipients. So there's just definitely an opportunity for innovation, but there's also an increased need for different types of innovative tools, innovative drugs, innovative diagnostics. Fortunately, we've actually seen a wealth of innovations starting to come into the marketplace. Many of them are becoming tools that are available to both clinicians and to patients, both you can see on the left, from precision medicine, both looking at different drugs that are recently approved by the FDA, drugs that are also in the pipeline, as well as new diagnostics. On the right, you can also see just really a lot of innovations happening on the devices side, primarily for the ability of on kidney replacement therapy, where it's either portable dialysis, safer ways of doing dialysis, which you can see in the center, or even just a goal of actually having an artificial kidney. These are just some of the many examples of where innovations are really starting to come and become more available to people with kidney diseases. But unfortunately, if you look across in, in terms of the investment landscape, the kidney ends up being still kind of low compared to other disease areas. This is data that was kind of culled together off of two different venture capital databases, and we linked both what you could use as renal or kidney health to see what's in there. And you can see it's still quite low, whether it's renal, kidney health, or combined. Over the years, even though you do see a slight increase, it still does fall behind other disease areas. So for this reason alone, the KidneyX, also known as the Kidney Innovation Accelerator, was started a couple years ago as a public-private partnership between the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and ASN, really to not just spur innovation, but really accelerate it in the prevention, diagnosis, and treatment of kidney diseases. KidneyX does this really kind of from three different pillars. One is we try to identify those innovations that have the greatest unmet need for people with kidney diseases, and we keep focused on that and being able to try to fill that unmet need. We take in kind of a partnership approach then to also kind of bring together networks and experts both through ASN and as well as with our other partnering organizations. And our third role is really to support those entrepreneurs along a pathway to the kidney patient, really all with the goal to sustain a robust marketplace so that innovations continue to come and become available to people with kidney diseases. So we take it from from two different angles. One is looking at the kidney innovation just kind of an ecosystem. One is where we can take innovations that may have even been used in other areas such as cancer or cardiology and try to steer them towards those unmet needs that are identified. The second one is, when you have innovators already within this ecosystem, we want them to continue innovating, really focused on people with kidney diseases. And that's really within the role of what KidneyX does in addition to its other partners such as NIH and others. The second angle is to try to figure out a way and it's to de-risk kidney innovations. And of course, these two are necessarily separate pathways, but they're obviously linked. One is to address technical challenges and regulatory questions, and that's where we bring together scientists, our partners at NIH, our partners at FDA, our partners at CMS, as well as other global regulatory agencies, and as well as experts uh, to come together and see if we could start to anticipate where there may be regulatory science challenges and see if there's opportunities to bring the community to try to address them kind of proactively before the innovators kind of hit that potential bottleneck. The second one is really just by creating some more stability in the kidney innovation space is really to just get investors as well as potentially companies really excited about being involved and participating, contributing to the kidney innovation sphere. The first one, the addressing technical challenges, regulatory questions, is something that, at least for now, one way we're addressing it is through the Kidney Health Initiative, which I'll explain in the next slide. So as Ed mentioned before, the Kidney Health Initiative is another public-private partnership between ASN, the US FDA, and about 120 different organizations focused on kidney innovations. Really, the focus is to address regulatory science issues that could go anywhere from endpoint measurements, where there might be a lack of clarity or consensus on how do you measure both safety and efficacy of different novel tools or novel drugs. We also incorporate through the Kidney Health Initiative's Patient Family Partnership Council a couple of different efforts to look at patient-reported outcome measurements and make sure those are also available to the community so that they can use those as part of their trial design or part of the research. One of the tools that has come out in 2018 is what we call the Technology Roadmap for Innovative Approaches for Renal Replacement Therapy. That is kind of predicting what patients and clinicians would need for kidney replacement therapy, both from a technology angle and then trying to incorporate, since we have the chance to, also patient preferences. And you can see that there's kind of in this box on the right, both what we were able to work with these groups to identify and prioritize were different ways that patients want to see improvement in their quality of life. And it's a mix of the different technological approaches, whether it's enhancing dialysis, whether it's really shifting to portability, wearability, and you can see kind of it goes on to eventually, an artificial kidney, which I'll talk about a little bit more. The technology roadmap is something that really kind of sets a foundation for how we're going to monitor what happens in the future and also guide the innovator community along that roadmap so that both patients, regulators, researchers, clinicians kind of see the progress of technology development and innovation. Another good example of where KidneyX was trying to get more information in terms of what are the most unmet needs is what happened just last year with COVID, and it's still kind of continuing on this year. ASN convened a panel in collaboration with a lot of its federal partners, which you see on the right, as well as a couple of the dialysis and kidney care facilities, to look at what was happening during the first wave of the COVID-19 pandemic. So this workshop was held in July of last year, and some of the example findings, recommendations are listed there, which are relevant to like needs for innovation. One was hospitals estimated that there was about a 25% increase in the need for dialysis machines, just to make sure, based on what happened during the first wave and what they're anticipating in terms of future waves of the pandemic, One thing that's kind of repeated throughout the report, which is available on ASN's website, is that the logistics for managing both people, the machines, the disposables, and consumables was a significant challenge. And there was a big call out for both supply chain, human resource inventory management systems, particularly since a lot of staff were also reluctant to remain in these COVID-19 positive rooms. So there's obviously a lot of opportunity here for innovations, and that's something that we helped support in terms of, or helped address in terms of the one of our prizes. So this is an example of where we've gone up to this date. You can see from 2018, that was where our roadmap was published. And to support what was described in the roadmap, we had two different, what we call redesigned dialysis prizes. You can see some of the winners that are on the right. We also had what we call the Patient Innovator Challenge to see, what are the different patient solutions. And you can see also some of the examples again, kind of on the map on the right. As I mentioned before, we saw an opportunity where we could look at innovations coming from patients as well as the care facilities to help support the safety and the resiliency of kidney care during the COVID-19 pandemic. And we had 15 prize winners that were just recently announced a couple months ago. Again, there's some examples to the right. And more recently, we just closed submissions for our first phase of what we're calling the Artificial Kidney Prize. I'll go into a little bit more detail about that over the next couple of slides. The artificial kidney is something that we see is inevitable as a technological solution, where basically we're looking at replicating the functioning kidney. We do know that at-home dialysis is increasingly becoming a viable option, and particularly reinforced during COVID, it's necessary for patients to make sure that they're maintaining their kidney care. Redesigned dialysis phase 1 and 2 addressed it. We're looking much more further down the line at the artificial kidney, which could be, you can kind of think in concept of both a wearable or an implantable concept that and we're keeping open in terms of the multiple approaches that could be used, coming from the science and technology folks, whether it's in engineering or regenerative medicine, xenotransplant, or even just kind of keeping it open to, what are areas that just haven't been conceived yet, knowing that we have some time to see if those are solutions that can get us there. The one thing that's very different also in terms of mindset is that the artificial kidney, it requires a patient-centered design, and we are both aligned to our past roadmap as well as developing a roadmap to an artificial kidney. One thing to think about in terms of artificial kidney is you have to think about it almost like a drug because it is a treatment. So you have to have that mentality of, who is the patient that would receive benefit? What is that utility and benefit for that patient? And we've actually seen kind of two different angles, which can still be connected. One is improved health outcome, as well as an improved quality of life. Hopefully we get both, but those are two areas that we need to kind of work with patients to better understand. And more importantly, what are the patient preferences for this artificial kidney? There's going to be some changes in lifestyle, whether they have to go in for maintenance, and what is that willingness in terms of a potential lifestyle burden on both themselves and their care partners? What is their access to maintenance services? Is there a place where they can get either, just to get it assessed, whether it's an artificial kidney, whether it needs to be, improved? That's an important part, particularly given that it's going to be something that's going to be potentially implanted or wearable. And then understanding the patient preferences, it allows us to understand what are the trade-offs in terms of risks and the benefits. Where are the risks too high that it's not worth going down? And where do the benefits outweigh the risks? And making sure we have patients tell us what that is. Obviously, the more practical side is we also have to kind of understand, from understanding which patients would most benefit, the reimbursement and out-of-pocket costs are something that we need to design in almost from the start to make sure that we're not designing artificial kidneys that are just too expensive for either the healthcare system or the patient that has to pay for it or their families. So as I mentioned earlier, KidneyX just closed its submissions for the first phase of the Artificial Kidney Prize just in March. We hope to announce the prize winners in September 2021 around a summit. We'll have details about that summit. It's publicly available to attend. In terms of the applications themselves and kind of our Really, this first phase was really to see what is who is working on what, and how far are they at, and really awarding prizes for those that have gone really moved the artificial kidney landscape further. What we were hoping for were integrated concepts. So we were hoping that we would actually see folks who are developing an artificial kidney, not just part of one. We were hoping for a diversity of approaches. As I had mentioned, we think the artificial kidney can be created by a multitude of approaches, whether it's mechanical engineering or cellular engineering, regenerative medicine, xenotransplant, and others. And we saw quite a diversity of approaches we were excited to see. I think more importantly, we were hoping for multidisciplinary teams, knowing that it's going to take a bunch of different scientific sectors to come together to create an artificial kidney, and we saw that. I think one of our last nice to haves was that we'd have international interest, and as you can see on the right in that map, we were able to get applications, some of them from around the world. You can see them highlighted in green. I think some of the smaller ones that you can't see were partners coming together from Israel and Singapore. So we were pretty excited at the interest as well as the broader artificial kidney community. We did receive 31 applications. Again, as I mentioned, several of them were big team approaches. We're right now in the judging and reviewing process, and look forward to announcing who the winners are in September 2021. This will be followed by a second phase, and we'll announce the scope of that second phase also in September of this year, with a March 2022 submission date. Again, all of this is to be confirmed. This will be in support of a $6 million total prize purse, in which we'll announce the winners exactly a year from when we're announcing the first one, September 2022. Our goal is really to start aligning what I had mentioned earlier about the Kidney Health Initiative's roadmap on the artificial kidney, and making sure that we're supporting the goals as well as kind of what was the aspirations of that roadmap. So I'd like to thank you and everybody for your time. Again, our goal on the right is to make that future state a lot closer. We know in order to get there, it'll require investments. We'll definitely need patience along the way to not only help design the artificial kidney and other innovations, but also tell us what other innovations are needed. We think, all of the approaches, particularly with artificial kidney, require a multidisciplinary approach. We do look forward to both your insight as well as your feedback. And your participation. Our emails were at that on the last slide. Please reach out to us, either Molly O'Neill, who's the KidneyX coordinator, or myself over at ASN's Research Discovery and Innovation. Thanks again for your time.
Thank you very much, Mark, for your presentation. I have a quick question for you. Based on your background as a professional managing very complex solutions in the federal government and working with a tremendous number of private sector innovators, I'd like you to comment on how you see a global patient consortium that's coming together to drive and support innovation, how that can have an impact on the regulatory and payment landscape long before these devices make themselves available to patients in the marketplace. If you could comment on that, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, that's a really good question. In terms of having the patient voice, the patients are the ultimate beneficiaries of all these innovations, whether it's a drug, whether it's artificial kidney, and we have to make sure that we're meeting the needs of the patient first from the beginning, and we only understand the patient need by having them tell us and describe to us not only what do they need, but how do we get there. Particularly with people with kidney diseases, the care partners are also very important. So it's not just the patient themselves, but also their social network. As we look at people with kidney diseases as well, there's also a need to understand both also the social network, their access to services, their ability to pay, or the willingness of payers to pay for these different options. It's not just telling us what is needed, but it's also important to have the patient voice throughout the whole process to make sure both the innovators are still addressing the patient need, and not, I'd say, shortcutting the prioritized preferences so if cost is important, if ability to access services from their home is important, we have to make sure that these innovations continue to also address those needs, not just from a biological perspective, but also just I would say both a benefit and an ability to take advantage of these options. And if we force a patient to significantly change their lifestyle to adopt a new innovation, I'd say we're probably starting off on the wrong foot.
Thank you very much, Mark. We appreciate your time and the full support of the American Society of Nephrology for our efforts at the American Association of Kidney Patients and for the Global Summit. Our next speaker is Dr. Shuvo Roy, who comes to us from the University of California at San Francisco, where he serves as a professor of the Department of Bioengineering and Therapeutic Sciences and Surgery. More importantly, he serves as the head of the Kidney Project, where he works alongside Dr. William Fazell of Vanderbilt University on an artificial implantable kidney. He's quite the patient advocate, a very good friend of AAKP, and we actually partnered as an organization with the Kidney Project in 2018 because the American Association of Kidney Patients believes so strongly in the advancements of science and innovation and for a future that includes artificial implantable organs, namely the kidney. Dr. Roy, go right ahead.
Thank you, AAKP and George Washington University, for the opportunity to provide an update on the Kidney Project. This update will cover some of the recent developments as well as the background on the Kidney Project that has set as its goal the development of a new technology to treat kidney failure. As you can see, our goal is to develop an implantable bioartificial kidney. What is this? This is a compact device that is surgically implanted in the abdomen to provide continuous treatment, and it combines a hemofilter unit to remove toxins from blood with a cell therapy unit, which we call the bioreactor, to provide the other primary functions of a healthy kidney. It operates continuously, as I have mentioned. Because it's implanted, there are no external connections. It allows for total freedom of mobility. By avoiding the through-skin connections, we minimize the risks of infection from outside. Because the bioreactor has kidney cells, it will provide more physiological therapy than dialysis would. And because the cells are protected inside the device, the patient's immune system and the cells are separated from each other, which means there's no need for immune suppression drugs. And the device can be instrumented with sensors to not only monitor its function, but also report on the status of the patient's health. The idea of the implantable bioartificial kidney is that it would get surgically implanted through a surgical procedure not very different from a kidney transplant, connected to the blood vessels, and then the waste would be directed to the bladder to pass out as urine. And this vision of the bioartificial kidney has driven us over the last decade to advance the technology to make this happen. The work we are doing here is building on the pioneering cell therapy work that was conducted by Dr. Humes at the University of Michigan in the late 90s and early 2000s. What he did was to actually take conventional dialyzer technology, dialyzer filters, dialysis machines, except he connected two of them together to mimic the architecture of the kidney's nephron. The filter to remove the toxins in the kidney is called the glomerulus. Here we call it the hemofilter. Blood comes into the hemofilter, generates ultrafiltrate, which is then directed to the next stage of the device, which we call the bioreactor, which mimics the kidney's tubule. The bioreactor is lined with kidney cells that perform the primary functions that a native kidney does. And these two components together provide more complete renal replacement therapy. So we are mimicking the architecture of the device that Dr. Humes developed over 2 decades ago, but making it available for the larger community that needs to be treated continuously and at home uh, for kidney failure. So this is the fundamental question that we've been working on, is how do you take the renal cell therapy work that Dr. Humes did, which is being implemented here on the left side of the screen, and make it an implanted continuous therapy device for the vast majority of chronic kidney failure patients, which is shown on the right. And this is what we call the Kidney Project, and that is the effort that has driven our team over the last decade and a half. And the approach we are taking is an engineering solution. What I mean by that is that we are taking the known knowledge that's out there and meticulously integrating it, refining it, optimizing it to create a device that can provide therapy. We took this approach because, unlike discovery science, which requires elements of chance and requires a lot of fundamental discovery time to get to a meaningful result, the engineering solution allows us to bring a talented team together and get to a solution that can provide treatment in a shorter period of time than most discovery science-based projects. Here you see a slide of a rover that will go to Mars and a team of engineers and technicians putting it together. It does take time. It does take resources in terms of money, but fundamentally, once it's done, it's going to go to Mars and it's going to work. It's not waiting for a new principle of physics or chemistry to be discovered. And we contrast this to some of the other basic science approaches that may result in a breakthrough, no doubt, but may take a much longer time to get to patients. The fundamental technology we are using to miniaturize the concept of the renal cell therapy device that Dr. Humes demonstrated at the University of Michigan over 2 decades ago is what we call silicon nanopore membranes. This is a technology that has been adapted from semiconductor microelectronics. The same technology used to make your phones, your laptops, and the like, and you can use this technology to precisely create a new membrane geometry that outperforms the conventional membranes that are used in dialysis today. Because of the precise geometry, you can have a membrane that is highly selective. Toxins from blood, just as your normal kidneys would do it, and it's highly permeable. What that means is that it requires very little energy to achieve that filtration, such that you actually do not need electromechanical pumps. You can run this just off the body's own blood pressure alone. And because it's silicon that can be modified on its surface by surface chemistry techniques, you can make it highly biologically compatible. So this technology, the SNM, as we call it, allows for a biomimetic filter unit that can operate with just the body's own blood pressure without the need for significant energy driving requirements, and can be operated for a long time inside the body because it's biocompatible. Now, I will take the opportunity to share a video. This video will showcase some of the research highlights that my team have worked on over the past few years. This video is from the lab of my colleague, Dr. William Fizel at Vanderbilt University Medical Center, and it showcases the research work that has to go in towards the development of an artificial kidney, in this case, both the mechanical filter and the cell therapy unit. Please watch.
The future is looking brighter for patients with kidney disease. Not only are new medicines and treatments slowing progression of disease, but new treatments for kidney failure are coming soon as well. Researchers have made breakthrough progress growing kidney cells in the lab for cell therapy of end-stage kidney disease. Long before researchers grow new kidneys in the laboratory or transplant them from animals into people, a combination of cutting-edge nanotechnology and living kidney cells will free patients from the tether of dialysis and provide the benefits of kidney transplant to everyone with kidney failure. Let's see how this universal donor kidney works. Kidneys filter the blood to separate wastes from healthy blood and then concentrate wastes from the whole body into 1 to 2 liters of urine each day. The biohybrid kidney does exactly the same thing, unlike dialysis with its heavy machines and batteries and gallons of water, which can never be implanted.
The cells that make up the kidney's filter are extraordinarily fragile, and leakiness of the kidney's filters underlies almost all of the kidney disease that results in kidney failure and the need for dialysis. Those cells are exceptionally fragile. They do not grow in the dish.
So Dr. Fizel and his team designed a new kind of artificial filtration membrane based on the size and shape of healthy kidney cells. This membrane is the first completely new technology in renal replacement in over 25 years. The collaboration with Dr. Shuvo Roy allowed this idea to progress from concept to FDA application. However, it's not just the kidney's filter cells that misbehave. Most human cells really don't look or act in a lab dish the same way they do in a healthy person. The tubule cells that concentrate wastes from the whole body into a little bit of urine don't reabsorb salt and water and don't excrete toxins when grown in an artificial environment.
This isn't just a problem for artificial kidneys. Drug companies can't use cells in a dish to test for efficacy or toxicity.
And medical doctors have to use entire animals to examine mechanisms of disease and effect of treatments. Solving the problem of cell culture stress solves many problems. Dr. Fizel felt that part of the problem was that cell culture was vastly different to a healthy body. Plastic lab dishes are hard, human tissues are soft, kidney cells have fluid flowing over them. Cells in a dish are still. We culture kidney cells with serum. But in the body, the cells don't really get exposed to serum. Dr. Fizel started testing these simple factors one by one and in combination.
Testing these factors, it's like a centipede driving a bus. If there's 75 feet on the brake pedal and you take 1 foot off, the bus still doesn't go forward.
The cells certainly look different on soft materials than on hard plastic, but they didn't seem to reflect these changes in the proteins they expressed, the key proteins. Enter serendipity. Rachel Evans runs the cell culture in Dr. Fizel's lab, and she had tested one batch of cells seeded on soft materials to see if they were making proteins to reabsorb sodium, and they were not. However, she had kept a second batch of cells to test if something went wrong with the first tests. She kept changing the cell culture medium on them until a few more weeks had gone by. Far longer than most people grow this kind of cell in the lab. She ran the test again on these cells that had been in the dish for weeks, and the cells had started to make the sodium exchanger proteins, a basic function of natural kidney cells. From there, the team went on to examine the signaling pathways that governed the response to soft versus stiff materials. By manipulating those pathways with drugs, they were able to coax the cells into pumping salt and water just like they do in a kidney. From the start of the project, we have tried to improve on what we accomplished to strive every day for a better life for patients with kidney failure.
70 years ago, we treated polio with an iron lung, but medical advances have put the iron lung out of the clinic and in a museum, and we strive to do the exact same thing for dialysis machines.
I hope you saw the range of disciplines, the amount of work it takes to build components of the bioartificial kidney. In this slide, I focus on just the mechanical part. You may recall the little silicon membrane that was referenced in the video. Here, we are now talking about moving it from a small filter unit towards something that would get closer to patients. On the top left, you'll see a photograph of a mini prototype of a filter. And on the right-hand side is a schematic showing where blood goes in and out and where the ultrafiltrate comes out. And we have spent time to design, optimize this device so that it can be operated in the benchtop and preclinical settings. Here, we've actually implanted that device into this animal, and you see a catheter sticking out. So we can test the performance of the filter after implantation. We ran that filter through a dialysis machine on the outside. Note, the filter is already implanted. The little tubing that you see is the catheter that goes to the dialysis machine. And we are able to run dialysis in this animal over the course of a few days. Some key points. There was no external blood pump. There was no blood outside the body, but we're able to perform hemodialysis. We did not need to use systemic anticoagulation like heparin. The design of our filter and the coatings of the filter are optimized such that the blood flows without causing thrombi or blood clots. And as such, when it was not connected to the machine, the pig, in this case, was able to move freely and drink freely. And what you see on the right is the data over the course of 3 days. And you should note there's no loss of albumin, no loss of protein over those 3 days. We did have a urea and creatinine clearance that was comparable to commercial dialyzer filters. But again, we did not use a blood pump. And there's a slight decrease on the 3rd day for clearance. This is very exciting for us because it shows us that we can make a filter that can operate just under the body's own blood pressure without systemic anticoagulation and provide toxin removal from blood, making us excited that we can build the hemofilter component of the bioartificial kidney. So next we looked at the cell therapy unit, which we call the bioreactor. You see a schematic of the bioreactor on the left and being implanted on the right. And what you're seeing in the middle are the cells that are put into the bioreactor. Each of the little gray squares that you see on the right-hand side are human kidney cells that are isolated from a cadaver kidney and grown in culture and then inserted into this bioreactor device. We put the bioreactor device into the animal and closed up the animal. And the cells in the bioreactor were kept in the animal for 3 days. In this case, we implanted the bioreactor in the region in the neck so we could monitor any potential complications readily via ultrasound. And what you see on the right is the cells have grown and are alive after 3 days of implantation. Why is that exciting? We've actually put human kidney cells in our device and implanted that into a pig. And we did not need any immunosuppression drugs. If we did that without our device, all the cells that we would implant would die because the human cells and the pig's immune system would reject them. But our membrane has the capacity to provide immunoprotection. And by protecting the cells, you can avoid the need for the anti-rejection drugs. And just like the hemofilter, we again did not need heparin or other anticoagulant drugs, and the device operated just under the pig's own blood pressure. So we now have taken the advances that we've learned from the filter by itself and the advances we've learned from the bioreactor by itself, and now we have embarked on the next stage in our journey. That is to integrate the filter unit with the bioreactor unit. What you see here is one of our first prototypes showing the filter and the bioreactor integrated together into a prototype implantable bioartificial kidney. The top half is the filter, the bottom half is the bioreactor. And there's silicon membranes, the S&M, and the cells to provide both filtration and cell therapy. I should stress, this is a prototype and it's a mini-scale prototype. It does not have enough membrane area or enough cells to provide sufficient treatment for a kidney patient yet. So there's more work to be done, but it shows that we can actually build them and integrate them together. Here we show the timeline of the kidney project from early stage conceptualization in the early 2000s, where we basically looked at the work that was done with the external renal assist device, the renal cell therapy device. We developed the silicon membrane technology and showed its proof of concept. And then we moved into preclinical work and optimization, where we deconstructed the project into a bioreactor development portion and a hemofilter development portion. And you can see for the bioreactor, we took on 3 key tasks. And for the hemofilter, we took on 5 key tasks that were successfully completed last decade. And now we are finishing up the bioreactor and moving into the integration phase. It is not trivial to integrate, but we'll have to integrate the 2 components and also scale up the device. What does that mean? It means we have to put sufficient cells and sufficient membranes to provide renal replacement therapy. It's not discovery science, it's engineering optimization. It does take time, and there will inevitably be areas we need to refine our work, but we are very hopeful that these are all tractable issues. Once we've shown that we can integrate the device in us and provide therapy to a preclinical model that has compromised kidney function, then we can move on to thinking about the first human tests. I show this slide and also point out the challenges. One has been the unusual past year of the pandemic. It has impacted our supply chain, it has impacted the pace of progress, and we are very fortunate that now we're beginning to come out of that and ramping up the pace of our work. We're also challenged by the need for funds. This work is obviously meaningful to many of the patient community, many of the physician community. Unfortunately, we are not at the stage that we are readily accessible to the investor community because they feel like we need to develop our technology further and demonstrate its feasibility in humans. But we are also challenged by being further out than the basic science proof of concept, which is where traditionally research projects get their grant funding either from NIH or National Science Foundation. So we try to work creatively with funding agencies, with donors, with patient groups like AAKP to encourage the resources to come to projects like ours so we can get this done and completed and advance towards patients in the coming years. I will end by saying that the progress we've made to date is due to a number of resources and people. So we have received early stage funding from the National Institutes of Health and other federal agencies. We've been fortunate to also been able to attract foundation funding and also donors, small dollar donors to some larger dollar donors that have continued to support us to move the project forward. But we need to be able to get this done. To get this done, my colleague, Dr. William Fizel, shown on the top right, and I encourage all members of the AAKP community to reach out to the various stakeholders and encourage them to support mechanisms that allow us to complete the development of the implantable bioartificial kidney. We have a great team. I encourage you to check out our website, and thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Dr. Roy. AAKP enjoys our partnership with the Kidney Project and your longtime support for our efforts here at the Global Summit and as the nation's largest kidney patient organization. Our next speaker is Dr. Vic Gura. And Dr. Gura is the founder of the Wearable Artificial Kidney, or WALK. He is also coming to us from Cedars-Sinai Hospital, where he has directly treated kidney patients and knows full well the burden of kidney disease on individuals and their families. And this is why he has been a champion and an innovator of artificial wearable organs and artificial wearable kidneys. Dr. Gura understands that treatments must align with the aspirations of patients. And that's why he has taken so much of his personal time and resources and invested them in solutions that are tailored for patients. Dr. Gura is joining us by video in a rebroadcast of a presentation that he gave to AAKP late last year. This broadcast has been extremely popular with patients around the world, and it provokes some pretty interesting questions about the feasibility of wearable kidneys, how patients are demanding solutions that are not in a dialysis center, and the great work that's being done by engineers and modelers around the world in efforts similar to Dr. Gura's to try to bring this solution to bear for patients. Dr. Gura, go right ahead.
I would like to thank AAKP and the University George W. AAKP is a wonderful organization, and it's a very good channel for all the patients to have some say or some organized input on the issues that are affecting them and the rest of the nephrology community. So I think that the folks that take the time and their efforts to do that are doing a fantastic job. I also want to thank Dr. Raj Dominic from the University of Washington for his leadership in doing a great organization and a great nephrology division. Let's get started now with my disclosures. Here are my disclosures. A wearable artificial kidney, why do we need it? How does it work? Does it really do the job? And those are the main questions I will I'll try to answer. Why do we need it? When I'm in a room telling a patient that dialysis is necessary, it's a very difficult time for me, for the patient and the families, their friends that are around, hopefully, in this difficult situation. And the questions that usually come up are, what can I expect? How long do I have before I'm gone? Does it hurt? Can I work? Do I need help? Who's going to pay for this? And my answers, the answers of any practicing nephrology for these questions, are unfortunately not very good. So what are the unmet needs in dialysis, and what are we trying to accomplish? We want to reduce the mortality, improve the quality of life, reduce the cost, improve access to the technology, and make life and cares more simple, because it's a quite complicated endeavor that inconvenience the life of the patients when they have to start doing this. So here is a list of all the many problems that affect the life of a patient when they are on dialysis with uh, sitting on the chair doing time, the pill burden of swallowing a large amount of pills, fluid restriction. If they drink too much, we have to remove a lot. If we remove a lot, they cramp. If we don't remove enough, they choke with water in their lungs. They go a lot to the hospital. Most of the patients on dialysis are fatigued, are disabled, and cannot hold a job and be gainfully employed, and most of them have problems with even doing their activities of daily life. So these are things we want to solve in a wonderful document called the Roadmap for Improvements on Dialysis that has been developed in the community. These issues are clearly stated and are the uh, guidance of we need to solve these things. And I can tell you here now that the WAC solves uh, most, if not all, of these quite successfully. And I hope I will make that point now. In the roadmap, we want to have a improved volume control, no sodium retention, less hypertension, no hyperkalemia, no metabolic acidosis, improved serum albumin, improved sleep patterns. We want to reduce or eliminate the need for pills and phosphate binders, improve appetite and nutrition, decrease need for blood pressure drugs, and decrease morbidity and mortality. Well, this was written by a kidney doctor. But if you ask the patients, the order in which these things are spelled out is a little different. Patients want more quality of life. They want, they care more about how they live whatever time they have than not necessarily how long they have. We have to respect that as kidney doctors, but the idea is that as a physician, I confess that's what I am, I believe that if we address these issues, each one of them, when it gets solved, then quality of life improves. And I'll discuss that a little bit further. So lately, people say, well, why don't we do this at home? And if we do it at home, people will be better off. And if we also would dialyze more frequently, longer, we can improve quality of life. But the way dialysis is structured today, uh, you simply cannot do more dialysis unless you're doing it at home. And if you live in Beverly Hills with 5 bedrooms and 2 people, you can definitely put more than one machine in your house. But if we are 5 people in 2 bedrooms, then it becomes a little bit more complicated. So those of us that sit around saying, "Oh, we have to do more dialysis at home," I would like to tell you that uh, it's simply not doable to the extent that the powers to be and the organizations want us to, because the technology doesn't allow it. You need more rooms, you need more space, you need water. Um, Many people want somebody to assist them because the technology is complicated, or because they don't feel very well with doing it, and they want somebody around. And we don't have enough nurses and technicians. And if we want to expand the amount of dialysis chairs available in dialysis units, there's no political or budgetary ability to simply double the amount of dialysis clinics that we have, so people can come more open. let alone the fact that patients don't even want to go to more often to a dialysis unit to begin with. They want their life back to do what they want to do instead of sitting around in a chair. So we said, well, how can we solve this? And I've shown this slide many times, and forgive me for being repetitive, but this makes the point. If we if we miniaturize things like the clock to the wristwatch and the big computer to a more powerful device that is in the palm of your hand with a smartphone, we should convert a big machine that weighs a couple of 100 pounds, is operated with an electrical outlet and requires 40 gallons of water per treatment into something that people walk around with. So we did that, and we went from the large machine to a belt that you could walk around with and work the batteries. So this belt worked with blood in red that comes through a pump into the dialyzer, and then in blue it goes back into the patient. The dialysate in green goes into the dialyzer, comes out in yellow. It's regenerated and purified through those yellow circles that contain chemicals that cleans the dialysate, and it keeps going in a loop. This way, instead of using 40 gallons of water, we went to 300 cc's, and this was the diagram of the WAC in its second version, version 2.0. This is version 1 that was trialed in an animal in Cedars-Sinai. This is version 2, and the first human trial was done in Italy with Professor Ronco in blue. And in the middle, you have a patient that was strolling in the park. This is a little park in the Vicenza Hospital where Professor Ronco works. And in the slide above, in the picture above in your right, you can see mother and daughter both on dialysis. Mother with a regular dialysis machine like we have today, and a daughter with the version 2.0 of the wearable artificial kidney. The second human trial was done in the United Kingdom, and we have patients that are wearing the device and walking around. With the tie on, there is the late Hans-Dietrich Polashek, a most gifted engineer that mentored us and helped us a lot to bring the WAC to where it is today. And Professor Andrew Davenport, the gentleman with the butterfly tie, and he was another great mentor and collaboration that we are very successful to collaborate with. And then we did the first FDA trial in Seattle with the help of Jonathan Himmelfarb and a wonderful team in University of Washington. And here is the first human being, first human beings in the United States, and the first woman in the United States dancing with a wearable artificial kidney while getting dialysis, not sitting in a chair, not attached to anything. And this is the WAC 2.0. So this is the WAC 2.0, and when we use it, patients told us it's too heavy, it's 11 pounds, it's still not small enough. And although we were very happy with the lady in the blue box in the bottom, in the sense that we proved that the concept is doable, but there were still ways to go because patients were still not willing to walk around with this device and move around. So we learned in London that in 8 hours we removed all the toxin indicators that we needed to remove quite efficiently in 8 hours. and we removed enough urea and creatinine over 8 hours. So we said, well, if we can do this over 8 hours, why do we need more equipment to keep removing this over 24? So we went back to the drawing board and we said we're going to have a day version in which we remove the heavy components that you can see here on the bottom, and we went from 11 pounds to 2 pounds. To that end, we also had to improve the device. On your left is the old WAC pump from the version 2.0 that gave us a lot of technical problems. So we kept going to the version 3, and that in the middle is pump 3 of 18 pumps we kept building and improving until we came to what you see on the right hand side, where we have the latest version of the WAC pump, which is fundamentally different from what we had in the 2.0, and it gave us a lot of advantages in how the device performs. So going to the drawing board, we said, okay, how do we make this smaller and more convenient for the patient? So this is one of the several sketches that we're starting to redo the WAC from the 2.0 to the 3.0. And we came up with a daily version that you wear around during the day. It weighs 2 pounds only, but it has a blood coming from the patient from the catheter into the dialyzer and going back, and the dialysate goes into one canister of sorbents, and then it goes back to the dialyzer in a circle. And this bag that contains the extra fluid that is removed is out of the bed. And we'll show you what happens when this is outside of the belt but still hooked up. So during the night, the belt hooks up to the 3 containers of chemicals that do the job that needs to be done in 8 hours. So these 3 guys work over 8 hours to do what they need to do. Thanks to the new pump, our rate of removal of fluids is going to be much more effective. And then we started to play around with different models on how this is going to look, looking at different things that people put on their own bodies. We looked at belts that people put things in, and we even looked at dialysis patients that hopefully might have a wearable kidney on a backpack and go fishing. I do not believe that the 3.0 will allow you to do that. Maybe another iteration, but at least I want you to know that we were thinking of how we do return to the patients in normal life, where you can go fishing if you want to. You can go. I'm not sure I can bring the WAC to scuba diving with the WAC on, but that doesn't mean we cannot try. And we look at different models of things that people put in their bodies to carry things, from a holster to carry a gun, to vests that can be worn in the field, and we even looked at different possibilities as where in the body you put what. And at all times, what we wanted is to give patients normalcy on how to do things. So we did a mock of the WAC in its version 3.0, and here we have one of our beloved designers. This is Lance, who did a fantastic job, and you'll see that. And we look, how can we give normalcy so you can move around, walk around with this, hopefully wear it under your shirt, so it's not obvious for people to see this. Many patients have expressed that they don't want to be seen with the device on their body walking around and people pointing fingers. We have to respect that. So with that in mind, we work a lot to see how we can make it not only light but discreet to allow normalcy. And we try to figure out where do we put what. So I told you that the waste bag with the pump that puts the waste into that bag are out of the belt. So they hook up here, but they can go in your pocket or in a table when you don't want to remove fluids. So this gives to the patients the ability to remove fluid if and when they want to. So it gives flexibility and choices to how to do this. And I'll explain that about the choices a little bit further. So this is one mock model that we produced with our designers of how the wearable will go. And you may notice that the parts are to the sides, so the person wearing this can bend forward without the impediment of these things in their belly. And we do need some suspenders so this doesn't fall. And you may notice that the catheter with blood, even though it's placed in the chest, like usually it's tunneled under the skin and goes and exits here. So you don't have a line of blood that can get entangled with things. And then you can open this and remove components as we would train the patients to do. And this is very easy. So it doesn't need a lot of manual dexterity or issues. And the fluid removal is done by a little pump with the bag. And you can roll the bag when it's empty and put this in your pocket. Now, if you have an elder patient in a nursing home, it doesn't really matter too much. But if you're working in your office, you can hook this thing up here and remove fluid. Then you want to go to Starbucks, you unhook this, the bag is now full, you go to the bathroom, empty the bag, you have your coffee, and this is not hooked up, so you have less weight on you, and you can go to the bank or to your Starbucks or to walk in the park, and then you come back to your office and you hook this back and keep removing fluid. So it gives patients choices on according to their lifestyle. If you have an elder patient in a nursing home, probably it doesn't matter too much. But if you're an active person that wants to have a significant life and do significant work, then this is a great advantage. This is an elder patient in this modeling that hooks up the night module during the night when he is asleep. But this lovely guy is here watching TV, removing fluid when he's at home, and then when he decides that he needs to take his stroll in the park or go to the bank, he takes this off, and when he comes back home, he removes fluid again. And for the purpose of showing you this, we have to do it above the shirt, but we will strive to make it small enough so it goes under the t-shirt, under the dress, under the garment, so they don't have to be exposed to other people noticing this if they don't want to. People may choose to wear the device like this, and it allows quite significant amount of activity for elder patients. You can, if you're younger enough and you hold the your whack under your t-shirt as opposed to above the t-shirt. But if it would be under your t-shirt, you wouldn't see this. And you can go and take a hike, so to speak. And at night, you can put it with a night module inside a pillow or a teddy bear. And what are the advantages that we have for these patients? I mean, so, okay, it looks nice. Does it do the job? So this is a table that would take me a long time to discuss. But the advantages is that we remove enough fluid so patients can drink whatever they want whenever they want, and we can remove it. They can eat all the salt they want because this thing removes enough salt, so you can add salt to have a normal meal. We have shown in all the trials we've done so far that we remove enough phosphorus to make phosphate binders obsolete. So you don't need phosphate binders, and this has more than one profound effect. And if you don't have fluid overload and you don't have a salt overload, it stands to reason that we will not have swelling of the legs, shortness of breath, pulmonary edema, and go less to the hospital. You don't need needles that are painful, and most patients I know don't enjoy getting two thick needles stuck in their arms at all times. So those are some of the many advantages of this device. So patients can eat whatever they want. This lady was wearing the WAC in Seattle, but she could eat pizza, French fries, and drink cola to her heart's content. This is a trial of WAC 2.0, and you can eat a banana or cheesecake. This lovely guy is walking around eating whatever he wanted and no need for phosphate binders. Let's talk about money. As stated by our good friend Eli Friedman, uh, the world cannot afford end-stage renal disease. It's unsustainable. And some of the economic advantages of the device we're bringing in front of you is savings of whatever the last time we looked at this is already close to 6.5 billion a year in just making phosphate binders obsolete. The charges for phosphate binders are about $900 per month. And if you do the math today, you go to 6.5 billion in savings just in making one drug alone obsolete. So we would have less hospitalizations, less hypertension, less cardiovascular disease, no phosphate binders, and a numerous amount of economic advantages with this device. So this lady would be wearing this under her shirt, and we went from where dialysis is today to the 2.0 to what we would like to see in the future. And this is what we are doing, not in the distant future. This is what we're building as we speak. Hopefully, the trial of the device, similar to what you see in this picture, will occur still this year. And this is not the brainchild of Victor Gura. There are numerous excellent scientists, technicians, nurses, physicians that have been collaborating over a very long pathway uh, to bring this to where we are today. And this is my time to thank them and you for listening.
I'd like to thank all of our speakers today who spoke to the issue of artificial implantable and wearable kidneys. The fact is that innovations are happening here in the US and around the world, and this is very important for those who have been impacted by kidney disease, and especially those who face kidney failure. Not everyone is eligible for a kidney transplant, and far too many people wait on the organ donor list, waiting their lives for a kidney to become available. But for these people who are suffering and for their families, it's very important that innovation move forward and that we bring artificial organs to the forefront and make them accessible in the consumer market. The individuals that you just heard from are some of the leaders of that effort, and we are quite proud as AAKP and George Washington University to be working so closely with them and to have them here today with us at the Global Summit. Thank you.